Yes, I know I was kind of in a rush, so I didn't have time to shave off my mustache, but for you, because I love you all so much, I had decided through painstaking effort and at great expense to digitally paint out this mustache in post-production. Nailed it. Well, Justice League is here. Yep. Pretty much adequate. That's the best way I can describe it. In a fashion, it was kind of like when Bart Simpson was jubilant that he got a D minus and passed. I was not really hyped for it, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that the DCEU was pretty much a mess. With the exception of Wonder Woman, the rest of it was an absolute mess. And because they were so hell-bent to catch up with Marvel, they rushed it through, and as a result I didn't feel as invested, or I didn't feel as primed, and I didn't feel that when we finally got to this point it felt earned. This movie did not feel earned, and that is the major problem with it. Now, of course, we're going to be comparing it to the Avengers for obvious reasons. Avengers got there first, and not only did they get there first, it worked. And the reason why, pure and simple, they took their time. Even though, yeah, for all intents and purposes, they had the same amount of films leading up to the Avengers. What I mean by that is that all the films that led up to it had actual time and effort put into making them at least good. Not great. I mean, some of the films are better than others, but they made the films at least good. Even Iron Man 2, for everyone who keeps heckling it, that movie still had a lot of good points, which helped in segueing into the Avengers. So there is the major problem with the DCEU as a whole. They were so hell-bent to try and be better than Marvel, they didn't stop to carve their own niche, and as a result, make us really feel hyped up for this momentous occasion. We had one mediocre origin film with Man of Steel. We had an absolutely abysmal team-up movie with Batman vs. Superman. Then we had Suicide Squad, which I think I may have flushed a portion of it down my toilet. I couldn't tell because it blended in with my shit. That's how bad it was. And then Wonder Woman. And if there's any proof of everything I'm saying regarding the benefits of time, effort, and development, look at Wonder Woman. If you want my real feelings on Wonder Woman, go watch my review. But as the benefits of it, every single scene with Wonder Woman in this movie, I was utterly on board. And the reason why, because that movie was so good. She was the thing I was the most excited about seeing about this movie. And you know what? My faith was justified because all the scenes with Diana interacting with every other character, though any kind of semblance of feels I was getting because she was the one character I actually had some kind of faith in, that I had any kind of real investment in. The first time she appears and when she does her thing, saving the life of a bunch of people, I was feeling it because this is someone who I really got to know and really like in a really good film. That's the problem with all the other guys. They were not in great films. They weren't even in good films. That's the big problem. And it's a shame because the one thing I can give to Justice League as far as the introduction of all these new characters. Now, we're not going to say The Flash got introduced. I'm not even going to say Aquaman got introduced or Cyborg in Batman vs. Superman. No, they got alluded to. This is where we are actually seeing them for the first time. This version of The Flash, same thing. And let's talk about that for a second. Now, many people remember when Ezra Miller got cast, a lot of people were ticked because we had Grant Gustin, who just made a big splash as the Flash in the TV series, and you know what? He was wonderful. Grant Gustin was so good in the role that when they were inevitably leading towards Justice League, and when they were building up to all this, Stephen Amell even said, why recast the Flash when we already have a great one in Grant Gustin? And you know what? He is right. Grant Gustin is incredible as the Flash. So instead of building all this time and effort to setting up a new Flash, and basically forcing us to go back to square one and get to know this other Flash who really kind of feels like a hybrid of Barry and Cisco from the TV series. In the end, I was looking at him going, Cisco? Oh, no, it's supposed to be Barry. Because he got the dad thing. But And even then, they do the whole dad thing all over again. I was like, we've seen this. In a fashion, it was kind of like a condensement of the first Amazing Spider-Man film. So with the Flash, you're either damned if you do or damned if you don't. You either do Grant Gustin and alienate all the people who don't watch the TV show, or alternatively, you do this and you slot this version of the Flash in with Aquaman and Cyborg, two other characters who we didn't get a chance to know. Now, let's get into one of the goods in the movie. The one of the things that'll actually be this movie's saving grace is the fact that, fortunately, they do leave a profound enough impression that I do want to see more of them, which is a good thing because it means that DC has not lost me yet, that I still feel like there's room for improvement, and through improvement, maybe in their solo efforts. Jason Momoa as Aquaman, anything they were doing with Aquaman, even if it isn't what they do in the comics, I was totally fine with, because we all joke about Aquaman in the past. I mean, on paper, and even just thinking about the idea of someone who talks to animals or talks to fish underwater, that's kind of silly, especially when you take into consideration when he's out of water, that power is pretty much useless. But they do something in this movie that actually kind of made me think, man, the potential is actually there. There's a great bit where Bruce is actually drilling him on that particular ability to talk to fish. And then they had a really good line, I'm paraphrasing, but there's a line where he says, I don't talk to the fish, I talk to the ocean does the rest. And I'm like, you know what, you just took a stupid power and you just made it epic. And stuff like that made me go, okay, with enough, if they actually can really try, I might actually be a bit excited for Aquaman. Same thing with Cyborg. Ironically, a lot of the emotional heart of this movie actually was carried pretty adequately. The whole movie's adequate, that's the big word. Adequately by Cyborg. And actually, a nice twist in this movie is that because, and sorry, getting into spoilers here, I'm not even going to bother with the title card, because they had a nice idea where all of his cybernetics came from the mother box, and the idea that because it's alien technology, we don't know if it's the machine acting or if it's Cyborg acting, it did lend to a nice dramatic angle with him, but the problem was they never went anywhere with it, and that was kind of irritating. And once again, time, development, all of this could have been done if they decided to give Cyborg a solo movie, which really kind of... Sad part is, and I think one of the things that made me worry about this movie was the fact that they kind of downplayed Cyborg in a lot of the trailers, to the point where I was like, why do we even care that Cyborg's in it? Fortunately, that was one of the nice surprises, that Cyborg actually became one of my favorite things in the movie, so I was very happy about that. And a lot of things that helped make these things work was the interactions between Diana and the rest of them. The only one who didn't really get that much was Aquaman. But even then, they still do a good enough job establishing the relationship between the Amazons and the Atlanteans. So there was a good enough foundation there, and it was established at least decently, where I got the vibe between the two. I suppose the best way to describe this movie, and pretty much describe the DCEU in general, picture a guy who lives on a third-story apartment, and he just got a crap ton of groceries, and he's got to take the stairs up, and he doesn't want to make two trips, so he grabs like a whole bunch. He grabs them all in one go, and you see him do this very arduous uphill climb, and unfortunately, because he's so hell-bent to get up there, he trips and breaks a bunch of crap. That sums up the DCEU in general. Of course, also Henry Cavill's obvious mustache, that also didn't help matters either, and the fact that they just gloss over it in CG with bad CGI. But this movie, I think, puts it front and center, all the problems that we've been experiencing with it, because they're so hell-bent to get the product out, because they're so hell-bent to get us to say, hey, we can be Marvel too. No, you can't. You know why? Because Marvel took their time. We're in phase 3 right now, and we're having this long, slow build-up to get to Infinity War. And you know what? Even if the movie's just okay, it's still going to be an emotional build-up, because we've had 10 years to build up to this point. It's going to be big because we've gotten to know every single character in the MCU so well. And even if they add new characters, that's fine, because we know all the other characters well enough that we can have room to introduce new characters. Not here. We have not even gotten a chance to like Batman yet. We haven't even gotten a chance to like, and even though we had a movie with Superman, we still didn't like him enough that we feel like any kind of semblance of caring when he gets resurrected from the dead. Come on, you know that's going to happen in the comics. And it doesn't just extend to the story either. This whole movie just feels manufactured to the point where it doesn't feel in any shape, way, or form like something you can devote your time to or you can devote your feelings towards. The action sequences are absolutely subpar and uninspired because this whole movie just felt so fabricated. You know what it kind of reminded me of? It was like Batman and the World of Tomorrow. It just felt like that. It just felt so superficial that I just didn't. And it's weird because I just rewatched Thor Ragnarok just recently, and a lot of that was heavily CGI, but I don't know. Maybe it's because some genuine time was put into it. In the end, it goes all the way back to the core idea of effort, time, development, patience. Because they took their time, it worked. And that's why Ragnarok worked. That's why a lot of the movies in the MCU work. This one just didn't feel earned. You don't buy Walmart meat expecting it to be on a par with the meat you get at Whole Foods. It's not going to be the same quality. And that's the ultimate problem with this movie. So, I just realized I need to go grocery shopping. So to wrap up, Justice League is not by any stretch of the imagination as bad as the other DCEU movies. Matter of fact, I would say adequate is definitely the word to describe it. It's not a movie that I'm going to cringe at the very mention of it. In fact, I may even, if anyone says, can we watch it? I'll think, okay, we can go watch it. The potential is definitely, I'm starting to see it now, and that's definitely a plus with this movie. But in the end, it just represents, as much as the Avengers represented the culmination of the efforts put into Phase 1 of Marvel and the lead-in, this movie pretty much is an illustration of everything that's wrong with the DCEU, but much like certain good elements of the DCEU, you can see the potential, and hopefully they can build on that moving forward. So I'm going to give it a final Narcotic Casserole rating of... Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think that this was the ultimate apotheosis of DC and that they can do no wrong? If so, I want what you're having. But if you disagree with me, leave it in the comments below. That's what they're for. And for more addictive content on Narcotic Casserole, like, share, subscribe, click, thou shalt be served.